everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here, right there, with Nikki Kinzer. Hi, Nikki.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
You feeling good? You feeling strong? Your kung fu is strong?
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially after the pre-music we had before the recording started. Why not?
I love that so much.
I'm ready to dance.
So much. We have a fantastic show today. I'm very excited about our conversation today because, it's in my space. And I love it whenever we get to talk about other great podcasts. And we've got a new one coming that is launching very soon. And the proprietors of said podcast establishment have joined us today to introduce it to our audience. But before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com to get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to our mailing list right on the homepage and get an email each time a new episode goes live. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at TakeControlADHD. And if you support the ADHD podcast, if you're a longtime listener and your life has been impacted positively by something that we have done here over the last 6 years, we sure hope you'll consider supporting us with just a few dollars a month on Patreon at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Your support gets you into the private Facebook group where if you were there right now, you'd be able to see this and
see us.
Yes,
and us dancing.
You'd be able to see the dancing, and you would hear Paul Stanley from Kiss and 45 minutes of stage banter. That's what you get.
That's not true.
No, that's what you get. They like it or not.
No, because now they're going to think, they're going to have to listen to 45 minutes of that.
They have to. That's actually the gateway. They have to listen to all 40 in order to, never mind. All right.
No, that is not true. He's making stuff up.
Thank you to everyone who has already supported us over there, patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. And thanks to all of you who are thinking about helping us out over there. All right, here we go. James Ochoa is back, and this time he's brought family. You'll hopefully remember James from our conversation with him last year, author of Focused Forward, Navigating the Storms of Adult ADHD. He's founder and director of the Life Empowerment Center in Austin, Texas. James joins us with his son, Jules, recent grad of the fine Clark University and researcher in cognitive neuroscience, and podcaster. The Ochoas are here with us today to talk about their new podcast, The Complex, a narrative fiction show that aims to unravel the complexities of ADHD through a cadre of eclectic tenants of an apartment. James and Jules Ochoa, welcome to the ADHD podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. I really, really appreciate the introduction, and I love the banter. It's so much fun on our ADHD neurology. It's just, I'm having more and more fun doing this. And I can't thank you both enough for everything you do and getting the word out around difficulties around ADHD and the number of years. I mean, really, 6 years is just such an incredible space to really be helping those with this diagnosis. And our project, The Complex, has just been such a fun, shiny object. It's only been 15 months since inception. And I'm going to let my son, Jules, sitting here next to me, tell us a little bit about The Complex. I wound up certainly being the executive producer and part of the cast, of course. And you know what the executive producer means? That's I got to fund the process to build it. That's what the executive producer is.
Congratulations.
That's about it. But I'll let Jules take it from here. Tell us a little bit about The Complex, and then we'll talk about what we want to do.
Well, again, thanks for having us on. This is really has been an incredibly fun project to work on. It started from just kind of a random idea on a road trip that I was taking with my dad to come back down from Clark University from Massachusetts to Texas. We were talking about a podcast that I had done in college on schizophrenia, and he came up with this random idea that, hey, let's do a podcast on my book. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that'd be interesting.
That sounds like a great dad idea.
I was like, I've never done. Okay, that was just a school project, but sure. And I kind of like downplay it, but like I do really have a passion for podcasting, and it is something that I've found a lot of fun in. And so, I worked with his writing coach and editor, and we wrote 6 episodes of a podcast that outlines the life of ADHD and does it in a very entertaining and kind of engaging way. Because you're just hearing this almost theater-esque podcast played out. in front of you. And then after that, I'll be interviewing James about some of the most ADHD moments kind of in that episode and how to navigate them successfully and how to kind of, try and prevent that from getting into these tailspins in the future. Yep. So how it's kind of structured is the complex episode itself will come out in 1 week. And then the week after that, a section called Afterthoughts will come out where I interview James. And then it alternates like that every week.
Oh, fantastic. So you don't actually have to wait 2 weeks to listen to the next show, because then you can listen to you guys talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I was really looking for a practical, fun way to get the concepts in my book out. And in a way that began to normalize the distress and ways to have some fun with it, but also really ways to get information out there, right? This is an issue around emotional and mental stress on ADD that is such a conundrum. It's been my biggest clinical piece to manage and deal with. I'm also happy to say that actually just this morning, I started my training consultation groups professionally, teaching other therapists about what I know here in Austin, Texas. So I had a group of 7 therapists.
Congratulations. Fantastic.
It was, well, you talk about fun and shiny stuff. I really want to change the world, particularly with therapists as well, on how this is seen and how it's treated.
Oh, that's great.
Let's get started and give people a little taste, just a little taste.
Let's do it.
We have 2 clips we want to play on the show today, and that's you want to set up the first one for us, Jules?
The first clip kind of just gives you a walkthrough of the complex. You hear 2 of the characters. One of them is myself, and the other is a character named Amanda, who is probably the most classic form of ADHD that we have in the complex. She is a college student, kind of trying to figure out what she wants to do. Everything from marine biology to finance is kind of her interests. But she can't really decide on one. And she's living at the complex. And, we get to see kind of some of her escapades as she tries to deal with the other ADHD tenants at the complex.
I think it'll be very apparent once we get this clip rolling. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I think so, too.
Right, here we go.
Tell me, how can I help you today?
Well, I don't really think I need therapy per se, but I thought it'd be good to just talk to somebody because a ton of stress has been building up in my life recently.
Okay, sounds like a good place to start.
Well, yeah, I mean, the people in my apartment complex are driving me insane, for one.
What, are these your neighbors?
Well, sort of. I mean, I live there, but I also own the building and manage it. It's called The Complex, and it's not just a regular apartment building. It's kind of a lifelong dream of mine, actually. It's a green-built, co-housing, sustainable development. Everyone has their own space, but we also share common areas, almost like a dorm. There's ride sharing, there's a food garden, and people take turns harvesting and watering the plants, or at least theoretically they do. And I have great tenants, different ages, different backgrounds, all really interesting people, but times like this morning just make me want to walk away and never come back.
Knock it off, Bernard! I'm trying to sleep right now.
Hey, Amanda. Is there a problem?
Seriously, Jules, my last caffeine just wore off, and I swear, Bernard plays that trumpet every morning like it's his day job.
I mean, it is his day job. You can't be a musician if you don't practice.
Can he not do it so early?
Well, it's 11 a.m., but sure, I'll talk to him.
I don't know why I always leave everything to the last minute. I had a geography project I had to finish last night, and I couldn't get it started until like midnight. Then I realized I had to go out and get a bunch of sticky notes because I had run out. I always do this.
Don't be so hard on yourself. I'm sure you'll do great on that project. Cute pajamas, by the way. Is that the fish from Finding Dory?
No, they're queen angelfish pajamas. Duh. Are they fish from Finding Dory?
That's so good. That conversation literally happens in my house between my 2 kids. My son is practicing his voice. Does he have to practice his voice in the house? Literally, he has to practice his voice in the house.
So early in the morning at 11? Come on.
Right. This is fantastic. So, Jules, let's talk just briefly about your process here. I mean, it was 15 months from that fateful drive. It's kind of a novel thing not to have it be, two people talking podcast, to really approach this from a narrative fiction perspective, which I think is really fantastic. And I was at PodCon in Seattle a couple months ago, and this was the thing there is a giant void in the podcasting universe of people who are trying to do these sort of narrative fiction podcasts. It is such a fantastic opportunity. How did you approach it, and what made you think this is a thing that's going to help you tell this story?
I came at this podcast knowing the exact population that it was going to, which was ADHD. And so I wanted something that was at least a little bit more engaging than the classic talk podcast that lasts for an hour, hour and a half, even sometimes 2 hours. Because I would, I would lose attention not being ADHD with that kind of thing. And so I wanted some way to kind of illustrate it, and make it more engaging than just that talk podcast. And when I was brainstorming a little bit with the writing coach and editor of my dad, Robin Chatsanoff, we were talking, and we were kind of playing around with this idea of this almost radio theater, this like kind of story, fiction story of a podcast. And we came up with the idea that I could be going to James for like some counseling, and you could see these flashbacks into the complex of when I start explaining these moments that I was going through. And, I think it just really clicked because it made it a lot more relatable to the listeners, so that they can actually see these characters and they can relate to these characters, and they can like see what they're going through and see what they themselves are going through, and then kind of pull from that. And, I think the afterthoughts especially will be useful because we'll be talking about these specific characters and what they were going through, and people can relate that to themselves, even if they're not ADHD, even if they're just around ADHD, or even treat it professionally. It will be so useful to kind of humanize it and make it a little bit less clinical and a little bit more kind of real and relatable.
I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
I think,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I do too. I'm curious, James, from your perspective, when you approach this, as author of the book and successful practice and thought leader in the space, right? As a professional thought leader in the space, when you approach this from the perspective of narrative fiction, how do you make sure that you guys are including all of the the right sort of practical professional stuff that you normally would if you're sitting down across from somebody?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question, Pete, because I had to ask myself professionally, especially regarding kind of the exposure vulnerability element that happens on ADHD and the stress we feel from that. And I had to process through, is this making fun of those people? And so it's a fine balance between having fun with the characteristics and the dynamics in it, but also being serious enough to say, hey, this is a real condition, and there are some answers for these kinds of things. And this is where the afterthoughts grew out of this. It's like, how do we really give someone something from this? And then, we had to be really careful regarding kind of the nature of clinical issues, so to speak, on ADHD. And I don't want to create an element that's going to be harmful again to someone for different reasons that I can't predict. And so part of that was, how much we go into characters, how it's written, and the scripts were rewritten several times to kind of, so Jules and Robin would sit down and write together, and then they would have a meeting with me, and we would go over these pieces about what I would say clinically and how that would match. And so we did a lot of a piece or a lot of writing back and forth together, Pete, in a way that kept it balanced between fun and humor, and also some significant help in kind of how to move it forward. But yeah, I have to tell you, it definitely feels there's a little bit of a risk taking in my own ADHD diagnosis about how it's going to be received and things. But I know that learning to laugh at ourselves and laughing with ourselves is a critical element of managing this condition.
Well, and part of your book, I mean, I think a big emphasis in your book is about accepting your ADHD. And so I think in a lot of ways, that's what you're expressing, is that you can accept these things, and sometimes they're funny and sometimes they're not, it just depends on what's going on. But yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's been quite a ride. I will have to tell you, I had no idea 15 months later this is what we would come out with. I wasn't even sure it could be done. And early on, I thought I was a little too far out on the edge in what we were doing. But Robin and Jules both convinced me, no, we want to keep driving with this. This is something here.
What does that mean? Too far out on the edge? What were you concerned about more specifically? Curious about that.
Clinically, I really, in my book, there's a fine edge between the science, say, behind this condition, okay, and the fact that this is a real issue, and that I don't want to be branded. I don't want to be seen as someone who is a shiny object around this and just trying to get exposure and image. I want to really produce something that's real. And that's a very fine balance, because there is so much information, potentially misinformation in the field about this condition that really throws people off center and awry. And I absolutely did not want that to be what was going to be in this podcast. It had to be playful, but serious enough. So to me, that was an edge of a risk to kind of say, I don't want to produce something that's going to be a problem or that's going to be an issue. I want to produce something that's going to be a resource. Yeah. Does that make sense, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get that sort of fear of being fluff. I totally get that. Yeah. Or being just, it's a pie in the sky. Nobody can reach it. And it's really what I tried and focus forward, that the strategies are very pragmatic and very real. But I'm also talking about things that are pretty edgy regarding using the imagination of your mind to help calm your sense of self, to build this internal resource of strength. But that has been the most effective way after almost 30 years in the field to say, this is how you teach people with ADHD to use internal resources, not just develop strategies, not just go after medication, not just understand what it is. You got to live with this every day, in and out. And I certainly do personally myself in the idea of storms and managing them.
And I think this podcast is important too, because it doesn't just outline the life of the ADHDer. Mm-hmm. It outlines the life of people around the ADHDer as well. And that is as important, if not more important, in creating this dynamic that James is talking about. Because if the person with ADHD doesn't have the support systems around them that allow them to build these internal worlds and create all these strategies and really move forward with their ADHD, then it's going to be nearly impossible for them to actually do that. And the people around them, need to understand and know what they're going through. And I think this podcast is a very good way to illustrate that in kind of mass consumer way.
And I have to tell you, okay, there's a bit of authenticity here too. Okay, so Jules does not have a diagnosis of ADHD. He has lived with me, who does, and his older brother, who does. My wife does not. And so there's some authenticity when Jules says, I've lived around it. Yeah. And he wanted to make sure,
I really have.
That was included in this space when we did this podcast. It's not just the people. So there's a little authenticity here.
Well, and actually, Jules, I'm glad you bring that up, because I was telling my husband about this interview and how I was looking forward to it, and I was excited to talk to you guys about this. And he asked me, he's like, "Well, what are they talking about?" And I told him a little bit, brief explanation of the complex. And I said, from what I've heard, what's cool about it is that you're seeing it from the ADHDer's perspective, but you're also looking at it from this apartment manager who has to understand what's going on too. And so it's interesting you brought that up, because I picked up on that right away. Now, I'm somebody who doesn't have ADHD, so maybe that's why I picked that up so quickly. But it definitely, I think, is a resource, going back to the first part of our conversation, it isn't just for people with ADHD. It's for people who live with ADHD, or people who live with people who have ADHD, parents who have kids who have ADHD. I mean, anything, I think, to help them understand. And then I got to say something else about your authenticity. James, this is a compliment to you and your wife. When I met you at the CHAD conference, you're one of my favorite people. Like, I love your book. I absolutely love the message because it's different than all the other messages that you hear from a lot of ADHD books. And I knew when I met you and your lovely wife, the authenticity of both of you it's so real what your purpose is and what you're trying to do here. So, I definitely give kudos.
Thank you. I'm humbled by that. And my wife, Edie, also had a great time meeting you. She really appreciated your energy and felt camaraderie immediately in being around and, around it and managing it and treating it. But no, this is absolutely a dream come true in ways I couldn't have imagined. And it's a lot of fun. And I tell you, from 1989 to now, the passion just continues to grow, and I'm just like, I'm floored at this point. It's just, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad it's reaching audiences like this to help. It's really, really good.
Well, we're very excited to be a part of that. We have one more clip. Jules, do you want to set us up on this second little clip before we wrap up?
So this second one is actually kind of one of my favorite parts of the complex, specifically because it includes a character named Genius Boy. This character, his full name is Ramon Berkowitz, and he is like a startup owner, and he has a company that features this little animated character called Fuzz the Slug that we created. It was like we created basically a business for this guy in the fictional complex. And it was, that's what happens when you're just kind of ripping off with somebody with like the fire hose of creativity that is ADHD,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And so this clip is kind of featuring Ramon and kind of his antics around the complex.
All right, here we go.
How am I supposed to manage the complex when no one tells me anything?
Sounds like a really chaotic environment you're living in.
Oh, I haven't even told you about Ramon, the genius startup boy. He paid almost a year's worth of rent in advance. He's crazy smart and really friendly, but super unpredictable. I think he works like 90 hours a week, but some weeks he hangs around the complex as if he's jobless. He goes through waves of having people over, and then that eventually stops, and he quits picking up his mail, and I think he's moved away, but then all of a sudden he pops up again.
Oh, Jules! I'm glad I found you. Did the hay bales get delivered?
Wait, is that what got delivered earlier?
Yeah, I was going to have a petting zoo for a garden party, but...
In my garden?
Well, it's a community garden for the complex, right? Either way, change of plans. They're swinging by to pick up the hay, but I got to get back to the office. Thanks for understanding.
Sure enough, there was a wall of hay in the courtyard. I can't believe they delivered it without me noticing. Anyway, they came back and picked it all up, but there's still hay all over the place. Half of my life is just cleaning up their messes.
There you go.
That's about it. That tells the story.
I gotta this is off the topic, but it just reminds me of something that my husband did.
These are my favorite stories.
We had a windstorm. This was probably like 3 years ago. We had a windstorm, and we live, behind a mountain, and there's lots of trees behind us and a hill, and one tree fell down. And all of a sudden, this one tree falling down became this big, huge project where he rented one of those, what are they? The little dumping truck things. And we had
he rented equipment?
Yes, he rented equipment. We had zones. Like, this was going to be zone 1. This was going to be zone 2. All because of one tree that fell down.
Did he get a chipper? Did he go as far as a chipper?
Nikki, when I hear that, I go, oh my God, that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, and when I hear that, I cringe. Like, it's...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Took 2 years So the first summer, I couldn't even go back there because I was so stressed out about the whole
I'm like,
thing.
tell me more.
Yeah.
How many zones were there? And did it wet?
No, yeah, for me, I mean, I have so many other things I would like to pick up with a shovel of some sort. We can knock out a whole bunch of projects. This is opportunity.
In one of the zones, my son and his friends, they decided to do a big bonfire. Well, the problem is you can't do a bonfire when, first of all, you still live in city limits and you're behind a big, huge mountain with trees all over you. Like, it's not safe.
And there's a burn ban.
The fire trucks came.
So what we're describing, right, Nikki? You had the complex at your home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
James, I think I have it in my home a lot.
Well, I'm thinking that this is what the audience that's going to be listening to this is going to be saying. They're going to go, "Oh my God, they just happened yesterday."
I think so too. I think there's a lot of stories there that people are going to relate to.
And
Yeah.
I will tell you, the co-writer for this, Robin Schatzenoff, who is my writing coach and editor, who helped me with Focus Forward, and she's just brilliant in being a writing coach. And helping carry my voice in the book as my writing went along and those kind of things. But she also has ADHD herself as an adult. Her passion is writing books. And so the creativity in this space with Jules was just phenomenal. She is a musician and she's an author and she's a contractor and she's all this.
It was so much fun.
She's such an eclectic individual. So I just have to give so much props to Robin too, as far as writing this. And she was here as part of the production and helping to lead the voice actors, and these voice actors were like, this is the wildest story in the world. We did it over a weekend and, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
You do a really good job though, where you can hear the steps and you can hear the door knocking. Like you really do get, you visualize what this complex might look like even, like I started thinking about what the characters started looking like and what that courtyard looked like. And so it's great. And it's also amazing to me that, this is a 15-minute show, right? Like the very first episode is 15 minutes.
Yeah. Each episode is around 10 to 15 minutes. Isn't
it amazing the work that goes into, like, when you were talking about the scripts and how you guys had to go back and forth, like kudos to you, because it is a lot of editing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say the production value is very, very high, and it's sometimes hard to find in a vast marketplace of podcasts to be able to hear all of the voices and to know that it's editorially been well strategized and crafted. So it's really, from a podcast perspective, it's a treat to listen to.
Thank you so much.
I will also tell you a backstory on the production. So we recorded all the audio and all of this like last spring and wrote it, right? Mm-hmm. And then this guy takes off for Southeast Asia for 3.5 months. And I'm like left thinking, is this really going to finish? And he came back this fall and finished it. But it's like it was a 2-step process. And man, the whole thing was recorded. I'm like, you got that backed up, right? And where is it? And it isn't in a vault. And I'm like, we can't lose this. So it was a very separated project, but worked beautifully because he wanted to go travel the world for a while.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, it's really great. Do you want to tell us a little bit? I will say that you have agreed so kindly to let our preview listeners hear the whole episode at the end of this podcast. So not in the live stream, but as soon as it'll go live to our Patreon listeners, and you'll be able to hear the whole episode early. But tell us a little bit about your launch plan. When can people hear it? Where can they find it?
Yeah, we're launching it on the 12th,
Monday,
which is Monday. I think it's this coming Monday.
Yeah, it's this coming Monday. It's in 3 days.
Yep. And we are going to be releasing one every week. But we've got 6 episodes of the complex itself, and then we're going to be releasing an afterthoughts after each episode. And so we'll have a release of the complex itself, and then the next week it'll be the afterthoughts, and then the complex, the afterthoughts.
And it's gonna and so certainly you can get to the links at jamesochoa.com. We'll get you a link for sign up to be able to get the episodes.
Yeah, you can find the podcast.
And you already have a trailer in there, right? I mean, I noticed you already have a trailer in the feed. Is it in iTunes yet, or is it just over at Podbean? It is?
Yeah, so it's in iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher. It's in all the major kind of directories you can go to find podcasts. It's not in Spotify. It'll be in Spotify once kind of it's halfway through the session because you need like 5 episodes to get onto Spotify. So yeah, it's pretty much everywhere else though. It's fairly easy to find.
Just fantastic. We'll put links everywhere. You know, I may even put, for people to earn it, I'm going to put all 45 minutes of Paul Stanley from KISS before, and then they'll be able to listen.
No, you are
we'll
not.
Work that out.
We have to stay off the paint process.
No.
Not good.
We clearly have some issues, me and Nikki, to work out, but we'll get there. I'm confident. We've been working together a long time. This has been so great, you guys. James and Jules Ochoa, we sure appreciate all of the work you do. And Jules, great to meet you, man. Thank you for joining the show here.
Yeah, you as well. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much for having us.
You know, if you get a chance, the other end of this is that this is going to be done in 12 weeks. If we get feedback from your listeners and other kind of things, I'd love to come back on in 2 or 3 months and kind of see how things have rolled out. I'd be happy to. If that's something y'all ever want to do, just let us know.
Oh, we love having you. So yeah, absolutely.
So does that mean that there might be like a season 2?
You know,
Man,
you never know.
You get someone shiny enough out there who's got some philanthropic money would be helpful on producing this. I'd work a little overtime last year, but it's been so much fun. But I'd love that. Yeah, we talked about season 2s and things like that are so much fun to add on. Who knows, Nikki? Who knows in my ADD mind?
Potentially, yeah.
That's all we've got for the main show. Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to this particular show. We sure appreciate your time and attention. On behalf of James and Jules Ochoa and Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next time right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast. And now, here's the whole episode 1 of The Complex.
Hey everyone, I'm Jules Anthony.
And I'm James Ochoa.
Welcome to The Complex, a podcast about ADHD with fittingly a slightly different format. Basically, I am the idealistic apartment manager and owner of a new building called The Complex. The place is full of eclectic tenants that I have absolutely no idea how to manage, so I seek out help.
And that's where I come in. Jules starts coming to me to understand more about ADHD, and all the while recounting moments from life at the complex. You'll be listening in on these sessions and hearing each of these ridiculous moments played out in front of you.
Yep. Now, just to be clear, ADHD is real, but the characters and personalities in this story are fictional. Any resemblance they have to someone in real life is pure coincidence. So, if you will, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy life at The Complex.
The Complex is sponsored by Focus Forward, Navigating the Storms of Adult ADHD by James Ochoa. Learn about the emotional distress syndrome and how to successfully navigate the ups and downs of the ADHD life. Get Focus Forward in audio, print, or ebook format at Amazon or jamesochoa.com.
Oh, hey, you must be Jules Anthony. Welcome to the Life Empowerment Center. It's great to meet you.
Hey, sorry, I'm so late. Time always seems to get away from me.
Oh, don't worry, it's nothing new to me. We know a lot about being late in this office. I've been doing this 28 years, and I joke that I usually take my 10-minute break at the beginning of the hour rather than the end. Hey, would you like some water, coffee, tea?
Oh, some water would be great. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Let's see. James Ochoa, licensed professional counselor, St. Ed's University, Masters of Education in Counseling and Guidance. A Himalayan salt lamp and a fountain. Wow, he has so many weird toys in here too. What is that? Focused Forward by James Ochoa? I didn't know he wrote a book.
Yep, I wrote a book. It took me 27 years to write. That's how long it took me to figure out the emotional stress of ADHD, which the book is about. Hey, go ahead and have a seat anywhere.
Wait, so is ADHD your specialty?
Yeah, it is. But tell me, how can I help you today?
Well, I don't really think I need therapy per se, but I thought it'd be good to just talk to somebody because a ton of stress has been building up in my life recently.
Okay, sounds like a good place to start.
Well, Yeah, I mean, the people in my apartment complex are driving me insane, for one.
What, are these your neighbors?
Well, sort of. I mean, I live there, but I also own the building and manage it. It's called the complex, and it's not just a regular apartment building. It's kind of a lifelong dream of mine, actually. It's a green-built, co-housing, sustainable development. Everyone has their own space, but we also share common areas, almost like a dorm. There's ride sharing, there's a food garden, and people take turns harvesting and watering the plants, or at least theoretically they do. And I have great tenants, different ages, different backgrounds, all really interesting people, but times like this morning just make me want to walk away and never come back.
Knock it off, Bernard! I'm trying to sleep right now.
Hey, Amanda. Is there a problem?
Seriously, Jules, my last caffeine just wore off, and I swear, Bernard plays that trumpet every morning like it's his day job.
I mean, it is his day job. You can't be a musician if you don't practice.
Can he not do it so early?
Well, it's 11 a.m., but sure, I'll talk to him.
I don't know why I always leave everything to the last minute. I had a geography project I had to finish last night, and I couldn't get it started until like midnight. Then I realized I had to go out and get a bunch of sticky notes because I had run out. I always do this.
Don't be so hard on yourself. I'm sure you'll do great on that project. Cute pajamas, by the way. Is that the fish from Finding Dory?
No, they're queen angelfish pajamas. Duh. Are they fish from Finding Dory?
Oh, joy. Another thing to add to the list. Bernard, you got a sec?
Morning, Jules. How you this fine day?
I'm doing all right. Listen, I wanted to talk to you...
Did you catch the comet last night?
Was there a comet last night?
Hannah's comet. Comes around every 82 years on the lunar calendar, and it blows my mind every time. Anyway, I got a little musical phrase out of watching it, kind of a snippet, and I'm working it into my concerto for household objects in A-flat with tritones.
Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. Could you only practice your trumpet during certain times of the day, or maybe post your practice schedule in the courtyard?
Oh, you're not to worry, my friend. I'm done with the trumpet for the day, maybe for the week. I'm about to pick up my mizmar, which is a kind of double-reeded oboesque thing. Truth is, I barely know how to play this thing, but I'm getting there. Hey, man, I love that ringtone. Bleat, bleat.
So, Bernard, Amanda's trying to sleep.
You're not to worry, my friend. I will bring down the volume. That is not a problem.
Okay. Thanks, Bernard. Well, I tried.
Jules! Jules, come on, open up!
Jessica, what are you doing?
Oh, thank God you're here. Here, take these keys. No, not those ones, these ones. And you'll be here all day, right?
Well,
Good, so sometime between 2 and 4, or maybe 1, give the keys to a girl, but I've got to go. Bye.
Wait, Jessica, any girl?
No, my daughter. Bye.
She has a daughter? Jesus, who keeps texting me?
Hello, this is Alex from Global Worldwide Trucking. Just letting you know I dropped off your delivery. Have a great day.
I had no idea what the delivery was for. Bernard kept playing this oboe thing, and I didn't know Jessica had a daughter. How am I supposed to manage the complex when no one tells me anything?
Sounds like a really chaotic environment you're living in.
Oh, I haven't even told you about Ramon, the genius startup boy. He paid almost a year's worth of rent in advance. He's crazy smart and really friendly, but super unpredictable. I think he works like 90 hours a week, but some weeks he hangs around the complex as if he's jobless. He goes through waves of having people over, and then that eventually stops, and he quits picking up his mail, and I think he's moved away, but then all of a sudden he pops up again.
Oh, Jules! I'm glad I found you. Did the hay bales get delivered?
Wait, is that what got delivered earlier?
Yeah, I was going to have a petting zoo for a garden party, but...
In my garden?
Well, it's a community garden for the complex, right? I mean, either way, change of plans. They're swinging by to pick up the hay, but I got to get back to the office. Thanks for understanding.
Sure enough, there was a wall of hay in the courtyard. I can't believe they delivered it without me noticing. Anyway, they came back and picked it all up, but there's still hay all over the place. Half of my life is just cleaning up their messes.
So it's interesting. A lot of what you're saying sounds like what I wrote about in my book, Focus Forward. There's a lot of chaos that comes with the diagnosis of adult ADHD.
Wait, adult? I thought ADHD was a kid thing.
Oh no, we've known since 1992 that it's not just a kid thing. And when you think about it, it makes sense. ADHD is a genetic condition. It's passed down, just like hair color or height. It's very inheritable. I can't diagnose people third party, but what you're describing sounds like the chaotic stress that comes with adult ADHD. It would be really weird, not to mention a statistical anomaly, if all your tenants had some form of ADHD.
Well, but everyone at the complex is different than everyone else at the complex. None of them are even close to the same kind of person.
Yeah, well, ADHD looks really different for different people. There are 18 criteria on the checklist for diagnoses, and how those 18 things look for different people creates a million different combinations. Also, a lot of people with ADHD make it to adulthood without ever having been diagnosed. People just think they're quirky. Maybe they're really intense all the time, or they can't stop talking. For instance, you get people who grow up in military households with such rigid structure that their ADHD doesn't show up until after they've left home, at which point they have no idea how to run their lives. These people can develop secondary issues, like Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder.
Oh, that sounds like Mr. Crispy.
Mr. Crispy? That's a funny name. Another tenant at the complex?
Yeah, that's not his real name, but he's always wearing one of those paper Krispy Kreme hats.
Like, all the time?
Yeah, like all the time.
So, does he work at Krispy Kreme?
Well, it's complicated. The guy is really complicated. I'm pretty sure he works there, but he definitely has more money than he'd ever get from working at Krispy Kreme. I mean, that's none of my business. He always pays his rent on time, and actually, he's the most organized guy in the complex.
God, tell me more about him.
Oh, you should see his apartment. There's sticky notes everywhere. No art or anything on the walls. Just a bunch of random to-do lists. And he has white noise machines in every room with buzzers and alarms going off all the time as reminders. Plus, everything is at right angles to everything else. It almost looks like a military barracks. And actually, he might be an army brat. He is from Killeen.
Well, it's really interesting. You're describing so many quirks that come with ADHD. If all your tenants at the complex really have it, you would absolutely be stressed out. The good thing is, I can help you with that.
Really? I can't even imagine this whole thing being able to resolve itself.
Okay, first of all, if it's ADHD, it never resolves itself. But you can learn how to handle it. The first thing is to calm yourself and not personalize what's going on with them.
But how the hell am I supposed to do that? They're people, so I personalize them. Also, I like every single one of them, or I wouldn't have rented them apartments.
Yeah, I get it. It's hard to take a step back, but it's not impossible. To begin with, I can help you understand what's going on. I will say that just because these people live in chaos doesn't mean they're broken. In fact, there's a lot of great things that come with ADHD. Lots of people with ADHD own their own businesses. Lots of them are really creative, especially when prompted to find solutions to their own challenges. They like stimulation, anything that's new and interesting. You might have attracted those kind of people to the complex because there's a lot to do there and it's on the cutting edge. People with ADHD love cutting edge stuff.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Do you have any time next week to talk? Because believe me, I have more stories. Hey everyone, next week an episode called Afterthoughts will be released where James and I talk about all the ADHD moments he spotted in this episode. He'll be giving all kinds of tips and tricks to help those with and around ADHD, so be sure to tune in. You can find the Afterthoughts as well as the coming episodes of The Complex on iTunes, Google Play, or at jamesochoa.com.
The Complex is produced by Jules Ochoa and co-written by Jules Ochoa and Robin Chachanoff. The executive producer and local ADHD professional is James Ochoa, LPC.
The voice actors for this episode were James Ochoa as himself, Jules Ochoa as Jules, Tom Doyle as Bernard, Marina Deo Pedraza as Amanda, Noel Gowlin as Genius Boy, and Jenny Larson as Jessica.